On Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, 24-year-old Jessica McLaughlin arrived for her shift at the 7-Eleven on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood. It was a familiar routine. She had worked this shift many times before, handling customers, restocking shelves, and closing her register at the end. There was nothing unusual about the day until the final moments before she was scheduled to leave. Shortly before 2 p.m., Jessica was preparing to clock out. In the store with her was assistant manager Valeria, a woman with whom she had a strained relationship. Without warning, a heated argument erupted between them. Eyewitnesses later described the exchange as loud, fast, and intense. What began as verbal confrontation escalated almost instantly into physical violence. According to those present, Valeria allegedly threw a bottle at Jessica. The object struck with enough force to shock nearby coworkers. Within seconds, Valeria grabbed Jessica by the hair, dragging her violently and swinging her toward the floor. She forced Jessica onto the ground, straddling her chest while continuing the assault. The scene was chaotic, with other employees attempting to intervene. Several coworkers tried to pull Valeria away, but she resisted forcefully, fending off anyone who approached. Witnesses recalled her strength and the difficulty of stopping her. For several tense minutes, the assault continued in plain view. At one point, Jessica managed to get back on her feet, gasping for breath. She uttered words that would remain with everyone who heard them. "Call 911, I can't breathe." Moments later, she collapsed again. Even after she was no longer resisting, Valeria continued striking her before abruptly standing and walking away. Jessica lay motionless on the floor. A coworker rushed to her side, quickly realizing she was not breathing. CPR was started immediately, while another employee called 911. Panic spread to the store as staff members tried desperately to help, uncertain of how to reverse the damage already done. When LAPD officers arrived, they found Jessica unconscious and unresponsive near the register. Paramedics worked quickly, placing her on a stretcher and transporting her to the hospital. She still had a pulse, but it was weak. Her injuries and oxygen loss made her condition critical. As medical teams fought to keep Jessica alive, another development was unfolding inside the store. While she received emergency care, someone was already taking steps to conceal what had happened. It would soon become clear that, in the aftermath of the violence, there were attempts to erase vital evidence that could show exactly how events had unfolded that day. In the immediate aftermath of the assault, the atmosphere inside the 7-Eleven was tense and chaotic. Jessica McLaughlin lay on the floor, surrounded by coworkers frantically attempting CPR and calling for help. Every second mattered. Yet the woman responsible for the attack showed no sign of remorse or urgency to assist. Eyewitnesses later described how, instead of moving toward the injured Jessica, assistant manager Valeria walked calmly toward the store's back office. Her demeanor stood in stark contrast to the panic gripping the rest of the staff. Once inside, she focused on the surveillance system, the very equipment that had recorded the assault moments earlier. Witnesses recalled that her priority appeared to be accessing and deleting the footage. The act was deliberate, suggesting an awareness of the incriminating evidence it contained. While her coworkers were locked in a desperate struggle to save Jessica's life, Valeria's concern was erasing the record of what had happened. After spending several minutes in the office, she emerged, bypassed the scene entirely, and left the store. She did not run. Instead, she retrieved a bicycle and rode away through the streets of Hollywood, leaving behind a traumatized staff, a critical victim, and a partially destroyed crime scene. By the time LAPD officers arrived, Valeria was gone. First responders attended to Jessica, who was still clinging to life but unresponsive. Despite Valeria's efforts, investigators were able to recover portions of the store's surveillance footage. While unreleased to the public, authorities later confirmed that the video clearly depicted the assault in progress. Detectives also collected detailed accounts from multiple witnesses who had seen the incident unfold from only a few feet away. Jessica's family soon provided context that reframed the attack as more than a sudden outburst. According to them, Valeria had been targeting Jessica for weeks. She had repeatedly argued with her, created a hostile environment, and made her feel unwelcome at work. Jessica's smaller frame and gentle demeanor made her a frequent target. Her family suspected jealousy was a factor, describing her as warm, helpful, and compassionate, qualities that drew people to her but may have provoked resentment from her manager. The violence of that day left Jessica without oxygen for nearly 10 minutes. Medical personnel worked to stabilize her, but the damage to her brain was irreversible. She was placed on life support, her condition critical, as her family gathered to face the reality of what had been done to her. At the hospital, The hours following the assault were defined by uncertainty and grief. Jessica McLaughlin had been placed on life support immediately upon arrival. Machines kept her heart beating. But doctors warned her family that the lack of oxygen to her brain for nearly 10 minutes had caused catastrophic and irreversible damage. Every test confirmed the same reality. Even if her body continued to function, Jessica would never recover consciousness. Her family gathered at her bedside. They spoke to her, held her hand, and searched for any sign of response. In those first days, hope lingered in quiet moments, but it was accompanied by an understanding that the chances of improvement were almost non-existent. Specialists offered second opinions, but each assessment reinforced the same devastating conclusion. Jessica's father, Clancy McLaughlin, became the family's voice during this time. He described the decision they faced as the hardest of their lives, a choice no parent should have to make. His words, shared publicly, carried the weight of their private agony. The recognition that prolonging Jessica's time on life support would not change the outcome. On July 2nd, after 6 days in hospital, the family made a decision to remove life-sustaining treatment. Surrounded by loved ones, Jessica was pronounced dead at the age of 24. The moment marked the end of a life and the beginning of a new stage in the case. With Jessica's death, the investigation shifted. The assault was now classified as a homicide. The Los Angeles Police Department issued a public statement confirming the change and appealing for help in locating Valeria Parra, who remained at large. The urgency of the search grew, but so did public attention. News of Jessica's death spread quickly online. Messages of condolence and anger filled social media platforms. Strangers shared her story, outraged by the circumstances and the fact that her attacker was still free. The emotional impact extended beyond those who knew her personally. It resonated with people who saw in Jessica's story a troubling reminder of workplace violence and unaddressed harassment. A GoFundMe campaign, initially created to support medical costs, shifted its focus to funeral expenses. Donations poured in, with hundreds of contributors leaving heartfelt notes alongside their contributions. Within days, the total surpassed $$40,000. The comments section became a public memorial, filled with messages from friends, former colleagues, and people moved by her story. For her family, the support was a source of comfort in a time of profound loss. Yet, it could not lessen the reality that Jessica's life had ended violently, in a place where she should have been safe, and that the person responsible had yet to be found. In the days following Jessica McLaughlin's death, grief began to give way to anger. The announcement that assistant manager Valeria Parra was still at large intensified public frustration. For many, the idea that she could walk away from the scene and remain unaccounted for was unacceptable. Social media became the center of that outrage. On platforms like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and X, users began piecing together whatever information they could find about Valeria's background. Screenshots of alleged old posts surfaced, along with personal details said to be linked to her. Some claimed to have known her in the past, offering stories about conflicts and instability in her personal life. Whether verified or not, these accounts spread rapidly, fueled by the absence of official updates from law enforcement. Speculation became a driving force. Some online commenters suggested Valeria had crossed into Mexico to evade arrest. Others insisted she was being hidden by friends or relatives. These theories circulated alongside photos, alleged locations, and even images said to be from her past social media activity. The intensity of the discussion escalated further when users began posting what they claimed was her current home address. The conversation shifted from seeking justice to issuing threats. Valeria herself was targeted with messages demanding that she turn herself in, while some posts included explicit threats of violence. Disturbingly, these threats extended to members of her family, with users warning that if police did not act, they would. What began as collective outrage over Jessica's killing was evolving into a dangerous online manhunt. In response to the growing public pressure, 7-Eleven issued a short statement. The company confirmed that Valeria had been terminated from her position and stated that it was cooperating fully with law enforcement in the ongoing investigation. However, to many, the statement felt inadequate. Critics argued it failed to address the deeper issues that allowed the situation to escalate, including why Jessica had been left to work under the authority of someone she had accused of harassment. The case struck a wider chord, prompting broader conversations about workplace bullying, toxic leadership, and systemic failures in handling harassment complaints. On social media, users shared personal experiences of being targeted by managers or coworkers, describing how their concerns have been dismissed or minimized. Many pointed to patterns in which human resources departments sided with the accused rather than the victim, leading to employees being pushed out rather than protected. Jessica's story became a reference point in these discussions, an example of how inaction can lead to irreversible harm. While the search for Valeria continued, the online community remained deeply engaged, driven by a mix of grief, anger, and determination to see accountability. Yet, the intensity of that engagement served as a reminder of how quickly the pursuit of justice can blur into dangerous territory when fueled by unverified information and escalating hostility. In June 2022, 3 years before Jessica McLaughlin's death, another young woman lost her life in circumstances that bore striking similarities. 16-year-old Riley Whitelaw worked at a Walgreens in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She was a dedicated employee balancing her job with school responsibilities. But behind the routine of her shifts, Riley was facing an escalating problem: persistent unwanted attention from a coworker. That coworker was Joshua Johnson, a 28-year-old male employee at the same store. Riley made it clear that his behavior was unwelcome. She reported her concerns to management, explaining that his advances made her uncomfortable and requesting to be scheduled at different times to avoid him. Her request was straightforward. She wanted to feel safe at work. Despite her complaints, management took minimal action. According to later accounts, Johnson was simply told to remain professional. No formal disciplinary measures were taken, and Riley's scheduling concerns were largely ignored. Months later, when Riley sought additional hours, she was told this could only be arranged if she agreed to work alongside Johnson. She accepted the shifts, perhaps trusting that her earlier concerns would be respected. On June 11, 2022, Riley was on duty. Sometime during her shift, Johnson took calculated steps to isolate her from others. Surveillance records later revealed that he stacked large plastic bins in front of a security camera in the hallway leading to the break room. Windows in the area were covered with paper, and a restroom closed sign was placed outside, measures typically used only at closing time, designed to keep people out. Once the area was concealed, Johnson confronted Riley in the break room. The attack was carried out with a Gerber multi-tool. Investigators later confirmed she sustained 42 stab wounds to her chest, neck, face, arms, and hands. These injuries indicated she fought back with every ounce of strength she had, but the assault was overwhelming. When she failed to return from her break, a manager reviewed surveillance footage and noticed a blocked camera. Entering the break room, he found Riley's body on the floor, partially covered with boxes. Blood was present on multiple surfaces, evidence of a prolonged and violent struggle. Johnson left the store after the attack. The following day, state troopers encountered him walking along the interstate nearly 100 miles away. He was covered in cuts and bruises. During questioning, he admitted being in the break room with Riley but denied blocking the camera, despite video evidence. Witness interviews revealed signs of jealousy from Johnson, especially after Riley's boyfriend began working at the store. In 2023, Johnson stood trial. After a short deliberation, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Riley's murder underscored the consequences of ignoring workplace harassment complaints. Like Jessica, she had spoken up, made clear requests for safety, and relied on her employer to protect her. In both cases, failure to act left them vulnerable, and both paid the ultimate price while doing their jobs. Joshua Johnson's attempt to evade capture after the murder of Riley Whitelaw was short-lived. Less than 24 hours after the attack, state troopers encountered him walking along an interstate nearly 100 miles from Colorado Springs. His clothing was torn, and his body bore visible cuts and bruises. When questioned, he admitted to being in the Walgreens break room with Riley, but denied responsibility for her death. Investigators already had substantial evidence linking him to the crime. Surveillance footage showed him deliberately stacking plastic bins to block the security camera. The crime scene revealed measures taken to conceal the attack, including covered windows and a restroom closed sign placed to deter entry. Witnesses provided statements about his prior behavior toward Riley, including jealousy and resentment after she rejected his advances and began dating another coworker. Johnson was arrested and returned to El Paso County to face charges. The prosecution presented a case built on physical evidence, surveillance records, and testimony from store employees. They argued that the attack was premeditated, pointing to the deliberate steps Johnson took to isolate Riley from others before the assault. In 2023, his trial concluded swiftly. After only 1 hour deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Johnson was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life behind bars. While justice was achieved for Riley, her case highlighted systemic failures in workplace protection. Despite multiple complaints, management failed to implement safeguards or reassign her to a safer schedule. The absence of meaningful intervention allowed a dangerous situation to escalate into a fatal one. This reality draws a direct parallel to the case of Jessica McLaughlin. Like Riley, Jessica had expressed discomfort and described mistreatment at work. She endured repeated harassment from her manager, but no effective measures were taken to address her concerns. At the time of reporting, Jessica's killer, Valeria, remained at large. The lack of immediate accountability deepened public frustration and underscored the urgency of addressing workplace safety. Both cases reveal a troubling pattern. When complaints about harassment or bullying are dismissed, the consequences can be irreversible. Employers bear responsibility to investigate allegations thoroughly, enforce protective measures, and remove individuals who pose a risk to others. The tragedies of Riley Whitelaw and Jessica McLaughlin serve as stark reminders that workplace safety is not only about preventing accidents, but also about protecting employees from targeted harm. Failure to act decisively can cost lives, leaving families devastated and communities demanding answers long after the violence has ended.